What I'm about to reveal is something very few people truly understand. There's a hidden code that women unconsciously use whenever they're around a man they're attracted to, and it revolves around something as simple as touch, but not just any kind of touch. There's one specific gesture, one particular movement that means only one thing. She wants you. And today, as a woman, I'm going to reveal that secret. Before we continue, there's something essential you need to understand. A study conducted by Harvard University found that 93% of human communication is nonverbal. That means while she may be saying, "That's a really interesting story," her body could be communicating something completely different. And here's where it gets fascinating. Researchers discovered that when women experience genuine attraction, we unconsciously activate a system of tactile signals that are incredibly difficult to control, even if we try. Dr. Albert Mehrabian, a pioneer in the study of nonverbal communication, found that words account for only 7% of the message. Everything else comes from tone of voice and, most importantly, body language. So why are you still paying attention only to what she says? As a woman, let me tell you something with complete confidence. We're incredibly skilled at saying one thing while communicating something entirely different. It isn't manipulation, it's instinct. Throughout evolution, women developed these subtle signals as part of natural selection. A prehistoric woman couldn't simply tell a man, "I like you," because doing so would have made her vulnerable. So the female brain developed an entirely different communication system through touch. What I'm about to share with you today is that very system. Some of these signals become obvious once you understand them, but the reality is that most men go through life without ever recognizing them. And the unfortunate part is that you've probably already been around women who are touching themselves in very specific ways, practically hoping you'd make the next move, while you were busy talking about the weather. But that's going to change today. By the time you finish this video, you'll be able to read a woman's body language almost as if you had an instruction manual. And let me warn you, once you learn these signals, you won't be able to stop noticing them. Now, before we move forward, I need to make one thing absolutely clear. Not every touch carries the same meaning. There's a huge difference between nervous touching and attraction-based touching. I'm going to show you exactly how to tell them apart with remarkable precision. But first, let's begin with the most recognized and, at the same time, the most misunderstood signal of all. Her hair. You've probably heard people say that when a woman plays with her hair, she's flirting. That's only half true. And half-truths are often more misleading than outright lies. The reality is that women touch their hair all the time. We do it when we're bored. We do it while we're thinking. We do it because we're warm. We do it simply because our hair gets in the way. So how do you know when it actually means something? The answer comes down to 3 specific elements: speed, exposure, and eye contact. When a woman feels authentic attraction, the movement through her hair becomes slow. There's an almost sensual quality to the way her fingers glide through the strands. It's no longer a practical adjustment. It becomes a display. She's showing you something. And there's a fascinating scientific explanation behind it. Throughout human evolution, healthy hair has always been associated with fertility and strong genetics. So when a woman slowly and deliberately runs her fingers through her hair while you're watching, her primitive brain is unconsciously communicating something very simple. Look at me. I'm healthy. I'm desirable. I'm a strong reproductive choice. It sounds primitive because, in many ways, it is. Millions of years of evolution didn't disappear just because we now carry smartphones. But there's another detail you need to pay attention to. Watch what happens to her neck. The neck is one of the most vulnerable areas of the human body. Exposing it is a universal sign of trust and vulnerability. When she gently moves her hair aside, leaving her neck uncovered, she's unconsciously telling you, "I feel safe around you." A study published in the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior found that women increased hair-touching behaviors by 46 when interacting with men they considered attractive compared to neutral situations. That's almost half again as often. That isn't coincidence. Now, let's look at the third element: eye contact. If she's touching her hair while looking at her phone or staring across the room, it probably doesn't mean much. But if she slowly plays with her hair while maintaining eye contact with you, even if it's only for a brief moment, you've just received an invitation that most men completely overlook because they simply don't know how to recognize it. Here's another detail that almost nobody talks about. The way she touches her hair matters just as much. Wrapping a strand of hair around her finger usually suggests nervousness, mixed with attraction. Running her entire hand smoothly through her hair reflects confidence and comfort. The first gesture quietly says, "You make me nervous, but I like you." The second one says, "I know you're attracted to me, and I'm completely comfortable with that." Also pay attention to repetition. One hair touch could mean absolutely nothing. But if she touches her hair 3 or 4 times during a 5-minute conversation, you're no longer looking at coincidence. You're looking at a pattern. And patterns rarely lie. But here's where everything changes. The hair isn't actually the strongest signal. It's only the beginning. What comes next is where things become truly fascinating. If hair is the appetizer, then the neck is the main course. And here's exactly why. From a scientific perspective that very few people ever explain, the neck contains the carotid artery, the direct pathway supplying blood to the brain. From an evolutionary standpoint, protecting the neck has always been critical for survival. That's why when a woman gently touches her own neck while she's talking with you, she's displaying one of the strongest subconscious signals of trust and vulnerability that exists. However, not every touch to the neck signals attraction. Here's the difference that matters. A quick, tense movement, as though she's relieving stress, usually reflects discomfort. But a slow, gentle touch where her fingertips lightly brush her skin while her body remains open toward you. That's something entirely different. Very different. Researchers at the University of Manchester found that when women experience attraction, blood flow to the neck increases slightly, creating a sensation of warmth that unconsciously encourages us to touch that area. It's almost as though the body is naturally directing your attention there. And now let's talk about the collarbone. This area is incredibly fascinating because it's where many women wear necklaces and jewelry. When she gently touches her necklace while speaking with you, pay close attention. If she's smiling and maintaining eye contact while doing it, she's engaging in something researchers refer to as active adornment. She's subtly drawing attention to a secondary erogenous area while continuing to stay connected with you. A study in evolutionary psychology found that women tend to touch their jewelry around 35 more often when they're in the presence of men they find attractive than when they're spending time with female friends or in neutral environments. The female brain naturally directs attention toward accessories that highlight areas associated with attraction. But here's something very few people ever mention. The small hollow between the collarbones, just above the sternum, is one of the most intimate areas that remains visible in normal social situations. When a woman places her fingers there while she's talking to you, it's almost as if she's unconsciously pointing toward that area. It's an incredibly revealing gesture. Now, before we go any further, I need to pause for an important clarification. Everything I'm sharing with you only makes sense when viewed in context. If a woman you've just met constantly touches her neck and exposes her collarbone, she could be highly attracted to you, or she might simply have a nervous habit. The real answer lies in behavioral changes. If you notice she performs these gestures much more often around you than she does with other people, that's where the meaning becomes clear. And speaking of clear signals, what comes next is considered by many experts to be the strongest indicator of all. But before we get there, there's something about the lips that will completely change the way you interpret many of your past interactions. Now we've entered sacred territory. The lips. And what I'm about to explain will probably make you rethink countless conversations you've had before. The lips contain one of the highest concentrations of nerve endings anywhere on the human body. They're incredibly sensitive. Because of that, whenever a woman touches her lips while she's around you, she's activating a surprisingly complex neurological response. But first, let's go through the different types of lip touches and what each one usually communicates. When a woman lightly places her index finger on her lower lip while she's listening to you speak, it's perhaps one of the most seductive gestures she can make. As she's listening, she's unconsciously creating a visual connection between her lips and the interaction you're sharing. It's almost as if she's silently saying, "As I listen to you, my attention keeps returning to my lips." It doesn't take much imagination to understand where that association can lead. Then there's biting the lower lip. This behavior has been studied extensively by body language experts, including former FBI behavioral specialist Joe Navarro. Navarro explains that biting the lower lip is often a gesture of self-restraint. In other words, we're holding something back that we want to say, or perhaps something we want to do. So when a woman bites her lower lip while maintaining eye contact with you, she's often restraining an emotional impulse. Take a moment to think about that. Now, touching the upper lip carries a different meaning. That gesture is more closely connected to evaluation. If she touches her upper lip while you're speaking, she's actively processing what you're saying and forming an opinion about you. It's not as directly seductive as touching the lower lip, but it does indicate genuine attention. And in today's world, where distractions are everywhere, genuine attention is already something meaningful. Now let's talk about another behavior that strongly separates casual interest from genuine attraction. Licking the lips. When we experience attraction, the nervous system creates subtle physiological changes that often cause the mouth to become slightly dry. Licking the lips may simply respond to that dryness, but it also activates an ancient instinctive response. The primitive brain recognizes it as subtle preparation for physical closeness. It's incredibly understated, yet remarkably revealing. Researchers at the University of Kent found that observers could correctly identify a woman's level of attraction toward a man with approximately 71% accuracy simply by watching her lip behaviors during a 5-minute conversation. The lips reveal far more than most people realize. But here's something even more important. Frequency matters just as much as the gesture itself. A single touch to the lips may not mean anything. However, if she repeatedly touches her lips while you're talking, especially during personal conversations or moments of quiet eye contact, you've likely identified a meaningful pattern. But wait, there's one combination that's almost impossible to ignore. When she touches her lips, tilts her head slightly to one side, and pairs it with a soft smile, you've just witnessed one of the clearest nonverbal signals of romantic interest that female body language can communicate without saying a single word. Even so, everything we've discussed so far becomes relatively small compared to what's coming next. Until now we've focused on self-touch, how she touches herself. But there's another level entirely, one that becomes much more direct. Before we move into physical contact with you, we first need to stop in one fascinating middle ground. Objects. When a woman feels attracted to you but isn't yet comfortable initiating direct physical contact, she'll often redirect that desire toward nearby objects. Psychologically, this is absolutely fascinating. Watch the way she holds her wine glass or drinking glass. If she gently strokes it while speaking with you, almost as though she's caressing it, she's unconsciously projecting the desire to touch. Body language researcher Vanessa Van Edwards has written extensively about this behavior. When our brains want physical contact but social boundaries prevent it, they often redirect that impulse toward nearby objects instead. Her phone can also become an important clue, but probably not in the way you'd expect. If she places her phone face down or moves it away while she's talking with you, that's already a strong indicator of interest. But if she also absent-mindedly strokes it without actually checking it, she's often channeling nervous emotional energy connected to the attraction she's feeling. Earrings reveal another interesting pattern. When a woman touches her earrings while listening to you, she's actually performing two meaningful behaviors at once. First, she's touching jewelry, which we've already discussed. Second, she's drawing attention to her ears, another area associated with intimacy. It's almost as though her subconscious is saying, "I'm excited, and I need something sensitive to touch." Here's another detail that very few people notice. Pay attention to whether she reaches toward objects that are physically closer to you than to herself. Imagine you're sitting together at a cafe. A napkin rests in the middle of the table. If she reaches across to adjust it or casually moves it around, she's subtly crossing into your space. On a subconscious level, she's rehearsing physical closeness before direct contact ever happens. Buttons on her clothing can reveal something similar. If she absent-mindedly plays with the buttons on her blouse, especially the upper ones, while speaking with you, she's naturally drawing attention toward that area in a way that appears completely innocent. I'm not suggesting she's consciously doing this. In fact, most of the time she isn't aware of it at all. But all of these behaviors have simply been preparing us for the moment that truly changes everything. The point where she finally decides to touch you directly. Now we've reached the most powerful signal of all. Direct physical contact. This is where everything we've talked about so far begins to come together. If a woman chooses to touch you, she's crossed an important psychological boundary. But here's what most men fail to understand. Not every touch means the same thing. The location, the timing, the duration, and even the pressure of that touch all tell a different story. Let's begin with the arm. If a woman lightly touches your forearm while laughing at something you said, she's doing much more than reacting to a joke. She's testing physical comfort. It's one of the safest and most natural ways for her to find out how it feels to make physical contact with you without making it obvious. Researchers studying interpersonal communication found that women are significantly more likely to initiate brief touches with men they feel attracted to than with men they see only as friends. The forearm becomes the ideal place because it's socially acceptable while still creating a sense of connection. Now pay attention to how long the touch lasts. If it's just a quick tap that disappears immediately, it may simply be part of the conversation. But if her hand stays there for even one extra second, that's where things become interesting. That extra moment usually isn't accidental. It's intentional, even if she's not consciously aware of it. Now, let's talk about the shoulder. When a woman brushes your shoulder while walking beside you or gently places her hand there during a conversation, she's becoming noticeably more comfortable with physical closeness. The shoulder represents stability and protection, so touching it often reflects growing trust and emotional openness. Then there's the hand. If she finds excuses to touch your hand, compare hand sizes, brush her fingers against yours, or allows her hand to linger when passing you something, you've entered a much more personal stage of attraction. The hands contain thousands of nerve endings, making them one of the most emotionally responsive parts of the body. Holding or touching someone's hand creates a stronger feeling of connection than most people realize. Now here's a subtle detail that many men completely miss. Does she remove her hand immediately after touching you? Or does she hesitate for just a brief moment? That tiny pause often reveals more than the touch itself. The longer she comfortably maintains contact, the greater her level of ease and interest is likely to be. Let's move to proximity. Sometimes she won't touch you directly at all. Instead, she'll stand unusually close. She'll lean toward you while you're talking. Her knees or feet may point in your direction. Her body naturally begins closing the distance between you without making it obvious. The female brain often reduces physical space before increasing physical contact. That's why proximity is frequently the bridge between attraction and touch. Here's another fascinating behavior. If she accidentally bumps into you more than once, gently brushes against you while walking, or finds repeated reasons to enter your personal space, those moments may not be as accidental as they appear. One isolated incident means very little. A repeated pattern tells a very different story. Now let's bring everything together. A woman slowly plays with her hair. She exposes her neck. She lightly touches her lips while maintaining eye contact. She gently strokes nearby objects. She stands close to you. And eventually, she finds a reason to touch your arm. Individually, each behavior could have an innocent explanation. Together, they form a pattern that's incredibly difficult to ignore. That's why body language should never be interpreted through a single signal. It's the combination that matters. It's the consistency that reveals the truth. And it's the context that gives every gesture its real meaning. Here's something I want every man watching to remember. These signals are not permission. They are not guarantees. They're simply indicators that attraction may be present. Real confidence isn't about assuming interest. It's about recognizing possible signs while still respecting her boundaries, her comfort level, and her choices. The most attractive men aren't the ones who force interactions. They're the ones who notice subtle cues, respond naturally, and allow attraction to develop without pressure. Ironically, that's exactly what makes them stand out. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked back and realized a woman was probably giving you these signals, but you completely missed them at the time? Share your experience in the comments. I genuinely love to read your story, and your experience might help another man recognize these signs before he lets another opportunity pass him by. And if you found this video valuable, make sure you subscribe because in the next one, I'm going to reveal another fascinating aspect of female psychology that most men never notice. But once you understand it, you'll never see attraction the same way again. I'll see you in the next video.